I worked and bought a home for my parents so they could stop renting without telling me they moved out and put my sister in. Can you imagine buying your parents a house, making every sacrifice imaginable, only to find out they secretly moved out and handed the keys to your entitled sister, while still expecting you to pay the mortgage? It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a cold, hard slap in the face that forced me to confront a devastating truth about my own family. My folks? They've never exactly been rolling in money. Not poor, but definitely never stable. I've seen them scrape by, my dad constantly hopping jobs, sometimes laid off, always just on the edge. It was like they were perpetually treading water, trying to keep their heads up. But growing up, my younger sister, Perry, and I, our experiences were night and day. She was the golden child, the favorite, allowed to do whatever she wanted, like she could never truly do wrong. High school dropout, no college plans, just drifting from odd job to odd job. Me, I was the responsible one. Always. My parents drilled into me that I had to make something of myself, because Perry, well, she just wasn't going to. So, they stretched their savings thin, took out loans to put me through tech school. They made it abundantly clear this was my one shot. They were counting on me. They talked about their sacrifices constantly, how they could have spent that money on themselves, saved for retirement, but instead they poured it all into my future. And back then I thought, yeah, that's just what good parents do, right? They want me to succeed. So I worked my butt off. My goal? Pay them back, make everything right. After tech school, I landed a decent job. Nothing glamorous, but enough to start saving and chip away at those student loans. Man, that felt good. I'd send them some money here and there, not a fortune because I was still building my own life, but enough to help out. But every single time, Dad would hit me with those subtle comments. Don't forget where you came from. Or, remember who got you here? It was a constant reminder, a low hum of obligation. Then came the turning point. I was home for a visit. First real time off in ages. We were just sitting around the dinner table and Dad, out of nowhere, starts in on how tough it is to rent, the constant rent hikes, noisy neighbors having to move every few years. Then he looks me dead in the eye and says, "We're just wondering when we can finally settle down." I kind of laughed, thinking he was just venting, but then he added, "You should think about buying us a place, son. You're doing well now. We've done our part to get you here." I just blinked, mid-chew. Wait, what? They were dead serious. My mom chimed in, all sweet and supportive. It would mean the world to us. A place to call our own. You're the only one who can make that dream come true. I felt this crushing weight. Trapped. They had sacrificed for my education, but buying them a whole house? I just started my career. They talked like I should already be able to buy them a house on top of my own expenses. I tried to deflect. Dad, I'm barely paying my own rent. I can't afford a house for me yet, let alone for you guys. They just brushed it off with these knowing smiles, like, oh, you'll figure it out. Over the next few months, the hints became a deluge. Every call, every visit, it would be so nice to settle down somewhere. Or, all we want is a small place, nothing big. Always followed by the familiar refrain. Sacrifices, drained savings went without. And the worst part? It was all true. They had put everything into my future. But it started to feel less like a choice and more like they were pushing me into a corner. Guilt was their weapon, and they wielded it like pros. Eventually I caved. After years of relentless saving, cutting back on everything, I scraped together enough for a down payment. I felt I owed them, yes, but mostly I just wanted the guilt trips to stop. So I bought them a house. Nothing fancy, just a quiet, simple place. But it was theirs. I was still sharing an apartment, but I told myself, this is good. They'll be happy, and maybe now they'll let me live my own life. For a few months, they were over the moon. Every call was about the house, how comfortable they were, how proud. They showed it off to everyone. I thought, finally, the pressure's off. But then the house only came up more. Mom would mention upgrades, hinting I should help with costs. Dad would remind me about the mortgage payments, like we were all a team. Every call, another discussion about the house. I just kept paying, sending extra whenever I could to pay it off faster. My life became work, save, repeat. I kept telling myself it was for a good cause, that I was making their dream come true. But looking at my own dwindling savings, a cold dread would wash over me. I was just getting by, making all these sacrifices for a house I couldn't even live in, while they sat comfortably in my accomplishment. And then the favorite child thing with Perry started creeping back in. The more I helped, the more they leaned. I'd try to rationalize it, but I was starting to feel more like an ATM than a son. Perry, always treated differently. No standards, dropped out, drifted jobs. But to them, she was finding herself. I was the insurance policy, the one who'd support the family. Perry was the family pet, getting everything handed to her. So here I am, paying for the house, and they start treating it like her space too. At first, I didn't think much of it. It was their house, technically. If she wanted to visit, fine. But then came the comments, Perry really loves the new place, or she'd been staying there for days. They even started hinting that she might settle down nearby. Every conversation, some variation of, it's so good for Perry to have stability, or maybe she could live here while she figures things out. Casually, like it was nothing. But I'd worked my ass off for them, not to fund a crash pad for Perry. A few months later, I realized her visits weren't visits anymore. She was practically living there. I asked Mom, who gave me some vague answer like, "Oh, she's just helping us out around the house." Helping with what? Every time I visited, Perry was there, lounging like she owned the place. One weekend, I decided to pop by unannounced. No heads up. I wanted to see for myself. I got there, and it wasn't my parents who opened the door. It was Perry, in pajamas, looking completely at home. She looked surprised and actually asked, "What are you doing here?" Like I was the intruder. I just stood there, stunned, trying to process why she was acting like she'd been there for weeks. I walked in, and the house was full of her stuff. Clothes, bags, makeup strewn everywhere. She had undeniably moved in. "Where are Mom and Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She shrugged, out shopping. "They won't be back for a while." We sat in this suffocating silence. I couldn't take it anymore. "So, are you staying here for a bit?" Another shrug. "Well, it's a nice place. Mom and Dad don't mind me hanging out here." I wanted to scream, "Yeah, well, I mind," but I bit my tongue. I knew it would blow up. When my parents came back, I brought it up casually. "Hey, I didn't realize Perry was staying here." They just laughed. Oh, she needed a place to stay. Things weren't working out with her roommates. I knew exactly what that meant. She'd gotten kicked out or couldn't pay. But to them, it was always a harmless adjustment. Nothing was ever her fault. That night at dinner, they praised her for helping out. I couldn't believe it. They acted like she was a hero for being there while I was paying for the place. Every time I tried to talk about the house, they'd steer it back to Perry, how good this was for her, how she was finally getting on the right track. It was like I didn't exist. They were making this house all about her, as if my sacrifices meant nothing. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling I had been duped. I didn't buy a house for Perry, I bought it for them. It started to feel like I was financing her entire new life. I left feeling trapped, like I'd walked into a scam I hadn't seen coming. My parents had this massive blind spot for Perry, and I was being taken advantage of. The next time I talked to them, another bomb dropped. They started talking about how settled Perry seemed and how great it would be if she had her own space. I tried to laugh it off. Well, she's got to find her own way eventually, right? They just stared at me blankly. That's when it hit me. They had a very different idea of what her own space meant. All right, so this is where things completely went off the rails. After that unannounced visit, I figured Perry would eventually move out, or at least contribute something if she stayed. I thought maybe she was just crashing temporarily, but a couple of weeks later my mom called. Casual as anything. She dropped it. They had moved out. My parents, the people I bought the house for. They moved out, and Perry had moved in full time. I sat there, phone in hand, trying to process it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I bought that house for their stability, for their peace of mind. And now, out of nowhere, they just handed it over to Perry. No heads up, no conversation. Just a casual announcement, like I'd have no problem with it. "Why would you move out?" I asked, my voice tight. This house was for you and Dad, not for Perry. My mom just laughed, brushing it off. Oh, honey, we needed a fresh start. Besides, Perry needs the house more than we do right now. She's trying to get her life together, and having a stable place to live will help her a lot. She said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the most logical thing in the world. She needs stability, especially if she's going to have a family someday. I was stunned. Stability? What about my stability? What about all the sacrifices I'd made to ensure they had a decent home? And now, Perry was just taking over, and they hadn't even bothered to ask if I was okay with it. Finally, I just blurted out, so, Perry's living there full-time now? And what about the mortgage? Who's paying for that? My mom's tone shifted, defensive. Well, honey, you're doing well for yourself now, aren't you? It shouldn't be a big deal for you to keep paying a bit longer. Besides, she's family. There it was. That infuriating line again. You're doing well. As if my hard work meant they had free access to whatever I'd built. I tried to keep my cool, but it felt like a physical blow. Mom, this isn't what we agreed on. I bought that house for you and Dad, not for Perry to live rent-free while I cover the bills. She sighed, exasperated like I was the unreasonable one. We thought you'd understand. She's struggling, and she doesn't have the same opportunities as you. You've always been the responsible one, and we're just asking you to help a little longer. At that point, I was barely holding it together. Help a little longer, Mom? I'm paying for the entire thing. It's not a little help. I've been paying extra every month to get this paid off faster, thinking it was for your stability. Now you're telling me you just handed it over to Perry without even asking me. My dad chimed in then, trying to sound calm, but it just came off as patronizing. Son, we didn't think it'd be such a big deal. We know you're financially stable, and Perry could really use this to get back on her feet. My voice was rising, despite my best efforts. She's been getting back on her feet her entire life. When does it stop being my responsibility to fix everything for her? They just stared at me, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Finally, Mom said, well, maybe we shouldn't have assumed you'd be so willing to help your own family. The way she said it, implying I was the bad guy, just hit me so hard. It was like no matter what I did, they'd always find a way to turn it back on me. I stood up to leave. Look, this needs to change. Either she pays her part or you guys do, but I'm not just footing the bill for Perry to live for free in the house I'm sacrificing everything for. They didn't respond, just looked at each other, disappointed like I'd let them down. Driving home, I felt more frustrated and betrayed than ever before. They'd pulled this move, blindsiding me with a decision that impacted my life hugely, and then had the nerve to make me feel guilty for not just going along with it. All my hard work, everything I'd done for them, meant nothing. Back at my apartment, I tried to calm down. Was I overreacting? Being selfish? But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I wasn't. Who just hands over a house that someone else is paying for without even asking? What kind of parents do that? And what kind of sister just moves in without offering to help? Without even considering that maybe this wasn't fair? I was at a crossroads. If I kept going along with this, what was next? Would I be expected to fund every little thing they handed over to Perry just because I was doing well? Would I always be the backup plan, the personal bank, whenever they needed money? I thought back to all the years I'd worked, all the sacrifices. I'd spent my life trying to make them proud, to give them a better life. And now that I'd done it, it was like I was just a resource to them. Not a son with his own dreams, but a wallet. And Perry? Not even remotely grateful. Just expected that I'd fix things for her. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep paying without setting boundaries. If they saw me as their financial safety net, they'd never stop taking, and I'd never live my own life. So I made up my mind. Hard limits. Even if it hurt them. Even if they didn't understand. I'd sacrificed too long for a family that saw my success as theirs to spend. I deserved better. After that last call, it was crystal clear. If I didn't set some serious boundaries, they'd keep taking until I had nothing left. They'd moved out, turned my house into Perry's place, and then had the audacity to use my extra payments to cover their rent elsewhere. They saw no problem with any of it, and that told me they'd keep pushing until I put my foot down. I took a couple of days to plan. I wanted to be calm. My plan was simple. I wasn't sending extra payments anymore, and if Perry wanted to live there, she had to contribute to the mortgage or move out. Period. I called my parents and told them we needed to talk face to face. They weren't thrilled, but they agreed. When I arrived at their new place, the tension was thick. They knew. We sat down and I got straight to the point. Look, I began, keeping my voice steady. I found out from the bank that the extra money I've been sending hasn't been going toward the mortgage. I don't appreciate being kept in the dark about where my money's going. Dad tried to wave it off. It's not a big deal. We needed the extra to cover rent since we moved out for Perry. You're doing well. We didn't think you'd mind. That "you're doing well" line again. I was so sick of hearing it. They used it every single time they wanted something from me. Like my hard work somehow made it my job to fix all their problems. I took a deep breath. But I do mind, Dad. I bought this house for you, not for Perry. And the extra was supposed to pay off the mortgage faster, not fund a second place for you. I can't keep doing this. Mom gave me that perfected, disappointed look. Honey, Perry needs stability. She doesn't have the same opportunities as you. We thought you'd want to help your sister. My patience was slipping. Mom, I am helping. I bought the house. I've been paying the mortgage and I even sent extra. But Perry's an adult. If she wants to live there, she needs to contribute. This isn't fair to me. Dad shook his head, annoyed. You're being selfish. We've done so much for you. Isn't it time you gave a little back to the family? My temper flared, but I held it. I'm giving back. I've been giving more than enough. But I have a right to set limits. And right now, the limit is I'm only paying the minimum mortgage from now on. If Perry's staying there, she needs to pitch in, or she has to find somewhere else to live. They both looked at me, clearly unhappy, but I didn't back down. I'd rehearsed this in my head. This isn't about not caring, I added, my voice firm. It's about fairness. I worked hard to get here, and I deserve some respect for that. I'm happy to support you guys, but not like this. Mom sighed, trying one last time. We thought you'd understand. Family takes care of each other. Family also respects each other, I countered, feeling surer than ever. I've done everything I can, but I have to draw the line somewhere. I need to focus on my own life, too. If Perry wants to stay, she needs to help out. If not, then I'll figure something else out with the house. There was a long, excruciating silence. They weren't used to me talking like this. My dad finally muttered, "We'll talk to Perry." He wasn't happy, but he knew I wasn't backing down. I left feeling drained but also relieved. For once, I'd stood up for myself without feeling guilty. I didn't know what they'd do, but I didn't care. I'd done my part, more than my part. It was time they respected that. For the next few days, nothing. No calls, no messages. Just silence. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far. But every time I replayed the conversation, I knew I'd done the right thing. I'd been bending over backward for years. It was time to put my own needs first. Then, one afternoon, my mom called. Her voice was calm, almost resigned. She told me they'd talked to Perry, and she'd agreed to start contributing to the mortgage. A small amount, but it was something. Mom sounded disappointed, like she still couldn't believe I'd actually asked for it. But I didn't let it bother me. That's good to hear, I said, keeping it short. I didn't want another guilt trip. Just relief. For once, they'd respected a boundary. Hanging up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relieved, yes, but also incredibly sad. I never thought it would come to this, arguing with my own parents just to get them to respect what I'd worked so hard for. But I knew it had to happen. If I didn't stand up for myself now, this would be my life forever. Constantly giving, constantly being expected to cover everyone else's mistakes. In the weeks that followed, things were quieter. They didn't push as much. No more sudden changes I wasn't told about. For once, I felt like I was actually living my life, not just as a backup plan for everyone else. I won't say everything's fixed. I know they still see me as the responsible one they can lean on. But at least now I've drawn a line. And if they cross it, I won't hesitate to remind them where that line stands. It took me years to get here, and I'm not going back. After that last talk, it became clear I had to walk away. I tried everything, reasoning, setting boundaries, even compromising. But they always saw me as their safety net, not their son with his own life and goals. So I made the decision I should have made a long time ago. I stopped paying the mortgage. The fallout was immediate. The calls started, first from my mom, leaving these long, rambling voicemails about family obligations and how disappointed they were. She'd remind me of everything they'd done, painting me as a selfish jerk who'd abandoned his family. Then Dad joined in. His voicemails were sharper, more frustrated. "We raised you to support your family. We thought you'd always be there for us." But honestly, I was numb. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I'd given them everything. They'd taken advantage. This wasn't my problem anymore. When I kept ignoring their calls, they started calling from different numbers, even borrowing friends' phones to try and catch me off guard. I'd see an unknown number, hesitate just in case, but sure enough, it'd be another guilt-laden message. This time I wasn't having it. I blocked every number. New ones popped up, I blocked those too. What hit me hardest was realizing that for them, this was normal. To them, family meant I'd give endlessly, no questions asked. It never crossed their minds that I might have my own life, my own dreams. They couldn't see me as anything other than a bank account with a voice. With no one covering the mortgage, things unraveled quickly. Within a couple of months, the bank took over the house. It was auctioned off. I'd expected it, but there was still a sting. This was supposed to be the home I'd given my parents, the home I'd sacrificed so much for. But after everything, it wasn't my loss. They decided Perry was entitled to it, and I wasn't going to keep throwing money into a place I no longer had a say over. I'd had enough. When the house sold, Perry and her husband had to move out. They couldn't afford it. The calls started coming from Perry too, though I'd already blocked her number. I didn't want to hear her sob story, hear about how unfair it was that I was taking away her stability. She'd been given every chance to step up, to help out, to take some responsibility, but she'd done none of it. I wasn't going to listen to her whine. Then came the guilt-laden messages from my parents. Even after the house was gone, they didn't stop. They tried to make me feel like I'd betrayed them, calling me ungrateful and selfish. "We never thought you'd just walk away from family." But to me, it felt like I'd done nothing but give to my family at the expense of my own life. All they saw was that the money had stopped flowing, and that was enough to make me the villain in their story. It didn't matter that I'd spent years sacrificing my own goals, that I'd bought them a house with money I could have used for myself. They didn't care that I was just trying to make a fair choice. To them, I'd become the bad guy the minute I started standing up for myself. Last I heard, my parents ended up renting a smaller place in a cheaper area. They couldn't afford their old lifestyle. And Perry? She had to finally figure out a new plan for herself. From what I've gathered, my parents have made cutbacks, but they're managing. And Perry? No more handouts. She's on her own for what feels like the first time in her life. As much as I might have felt guilty before, now I see it differently. She needed that wake-up call. Maybe now, without me as a fallback, she'll realize she has to put in her own work. As for me, I finally got my own place. It's nothing fancy, a small apartment that I pay for on my own terms. And there's a kind of peace in it, knowing this space belongs to me. Knowing I'm not constantly working just to fund someone else's life. I'm finally able to start saving for a future that belongs to me alone. The idea of having my own house someday, one that's truly mine, is a goal I'm actually excited about. Looking back, it's wild how long it took me to see the truth. For so many years, I told myself I was just doing what was right. That family meant giving everything you had. But somewhere along the way, family became a way for them to take and take, without ever thinking about what it cost me. It's a harsh realization, but I needed it. I wasn't just their kid. I was their wallet. And as much as that hurt, it's helped me draw the line I should have drawn years ago. They say hindsight's 20/20ths. And I guess they're right. If I'd known how things would turn out, maybe I'd have handled it differently. But at the same time, maybe this was the only way for me to see the truth. All those years of guilt, all those sacrifices, I see now that it was more about control than love. They didn't want a son who was happy and independent. They wanted someone who'd take care of them without question. I don't know if they'll ever come to terms with what happened. For all I know, I'll always be the selfish son who abandoned his family when they needed him. But honestly, I'm okay with that. They can think what they want, believe whatever story makes them feel better. At the end of the day, I know I did the right thing by walking away. Now, I'm finally free to focus on myself. I'm saving up, making plans, building a life that doesn't revolve around bailing anyone else out. For the first time, my future feels like it's mine. And I can't even describe how good it feels to know that the things I work for will actually go toward my own life, not just get swallowed up by someone else's needs. It's taken me a long time to get here, but I don't regret it. If anything, I'm grateful I finally saw the truth and had the strength to make a change. Family should be about love and respect, not obligation and sacrifice. Have you ever faced something like this, where you had to draw a hard line with family? I really want to hear your thoughts on this. What would you have done in my place?